I can just share like this. That's fine. Let me see. How do I? Okay. So like I said, my name is Alex Kozlowski. I'm a coach, a personal trainer, a nutritionist, and I'm also an athlete myself. And I'm going to be sharing with you guys about how I basically my journey like through my life through injury, through mental health diagnoses, and kind of how I went from rock bottom to where I am now as a successful online fitness coach as well as content creator. So I wanted to start out with a quote about resilience. This one says, "Life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient." So resilience for me is definitely something that has always been really important. We'll get into it a little bit more, but I went through major surgeries as a teenager while also being a top level soccer player in the US. And to come back from those injuries was, I needed resilience. I needed to continue to push past the constant setback after setback. And to go a little bit more into it, my start in athletics. So I started playing soccer at 3 years old. I grew up and soccer was my entire life. I played all through elementary school, middle school, high school, and I actually lived overseas in Taiwan for about 3 years, and I played over there as well. And when we moved back to the US, right before I started the sixth grade, so right before middle school, I started on a recreational team. And the next year in seventh grade, I was able to make the lowest level travel team in my area. And the next year, I made the second to top team. And then my freshman year of high school, I was on the top team playing on an elite club national team. As a freshman in high school, I was being recruited by top 50 Division I schools, including Arizona, Vanderbilt, Michigan, just to name a couple. But then also freshman year is when my injuries started. I had three injuries in my knee. So I had three ACL tears, and they were all contact tears. By contact tear, I mean somebody had taken out my knee. So the first couple times they were actually all the times basically my knee was kicked in. So I had three major surgeries before I was 17. After that third one, or when I got the news about the third one that I needed to have surgery again, I decided that even though I've dedicated my life up to that point to soccer, I couldn't do it anymore. I could not deal with a fourth time. And because of these setbacks, it was pushing me further and further back with recruiting. And if you know anything about soccer, especially like women's soccer in the US, recruiting starts in middle school. So to have been where I was as a freshman and then just disappearing and then coming back for a short period of time and then disappearing again, and just that cycle over and over was just not something I wanted to do again. So I started to run cross country and track for my high school. And my senior year, I was actually able to walk on at North Carolina State University. And if anybody knows anything about cross country or distance running in the US, specifically at the NCAA Division I level, North Carolina State, while I was in school between 2019 and 2023, my team had won three back-to-back national championships. And throughout this time, from all of my injuries, changing sports, all the things that a teenager goes through as well, I struggled a lot with my identity. There was a lot of pressure and, body breakdown. And next, I wanted to kind of talk about the emotional fallout, the struggles and the hardships that I faced in sports, and just in my life through those years. So I every day felt like life or death. Every day felt like, am I going to make it another day? Like it was so hard to want to wake up another morning to live another day. It was so incredibly difficult. And this kind of started back in 2013. I was when my parents began their separation. And through this, there was a lot of emotional trauma. The summer before my sophomore year of high school, I had a suicide attempt, and my mom ended up making it about her. She didn't even care that I was the one that was in the hospital. And a lot of my emotional trauma comes from the very strained relationship that I had with my mom growing up. And then, there's that. And then 2014 to 2017, that is where my injuries, all my ACL injuries happened. And I fell into a pretty deep depression, and that really carried on with me a lot. And then in 2016, I was sexually assaulted. And, just kind of adds to that trauma that I was already experiencing at home. And then, 2019 to 2021, when I was on the team, I was experiencing back-to-back injuries. It was constant setbacks. I ended up only really racing like two track meets during the school year. So that in itself was very difficult. But then in 2019, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder and PTSD. So things kind of started to make sense in understanding what I was feeling. A lot of it came from the bipolar disorder, as well as understanding that a lot of the experiences that I went through my parents' divorce, through when I went through in high school, caused a lasting post-traumatic stress disorder response. And to talk more about my mental health diagnosis, the bipolar 2 one was truly a life-changing diagnosis. It really just something clicked when I got that diagnosis, and when my psychiatrist kind of explained the different types of bipolar disorder, and talked about how bipolar 2 is you're in a depressed state a lot, but then every once in a while you have a manic episode where you feel amazing, you have all this energy, you can't sleep because you want to do a bajillion things. And that like resonated so much with me, because that had been my entire life. When I discussed my diagnosis with my family, every single person in my family was like, wow, that makes so much sense. Um, so it just, that bipolar diagnosis just made so much sense. And that having that diagnosis kind of led to treatment, and I'll get into that more. And then the PTSD diagnosis, I think that's definitely a scary one to get, specifically complex. So CPTSD, because it wasn't just one specific trauma that led to the traumatic stress. Um, it was multiple traumatic events that happened through the course of my teenage years, from the verbal and emotional abuse that I faced in my house from my mom, and then also the sexual assault that I faced as a teenager. But when you get a diagnosis, you kind of have a choice in deciding to get treatment and to get better. Kind of how I discussed earlier, every day was felt like a life or death situation, trying to figure out what will the next day bring. And once I got these diagnoses, my first question was, what do I do? What can I do to feel better and to stop feeling like I want to die, to finally feel like I want to be alive and I want to live every day. I was so tired of being in the survival mode. I was so tired of waking up and just wanting to go back to sleep because I didn't want to live life. And with that came medication, dealing with the stigma, and again, like I said, survival mode. And having that diagnosis was, part of that big turning point for me. The moment of realization that things could get better. Something my dad always said to me, especially while I was in high school, was tomorrow is a new day, and just take it day by day. And it's the pivotal choice in that with the diagnosis and, having a new day, was that I wanted to take the initiative to have a better life. I wanted to actively choose to live every single day. I wanted to live. I decided then that I wanted to be alive and I wanted to live a life worth living. And with that, I, you know, got back into school. Well, I was still in school, but I ended up changing my major after my sophomore year of college. My freshman and sophomore year, I was doing human biology. Originally, I wanted to go to PA school and I wanted to be a PA in the Army. But I was struggling where I was, and this was like right before my diagnoses. I was struggling at the class loads. I also didn't love what I was studying, and that was hard for me. It was hard to, I'm sure everybody says, experience having to do something that you don't love, so you just don't want to do it because it doesn't bring any satisfaction. So that's kind of what my major was like. And I had a conversation with my coach about what I was going to do. And he asked me two really important questions. Um, why did I want to work in healthcare? And, what did I want to do? So, my why with working in healthcare was that I wanted to help people. I wanted to meet people. I wanted to learn their stories and I wanted to help them live better lives. Um, so with that, what could I do? And he brought up the idea of becoming a reporter and telling stories within my community, and he tied back my love for sports to reporting, and we discussed like sports reporting and how I could tell these amazing stories of all of these athletes and things they're doing, not just on the court or on the field or on the track, but also in their communities. And that led to me changing my major to communication with a concentration in media studies. And my junior year was really about kind of catching up, getting the uh, freshman and sophomore classes during my junior year. And then my senior year, I really locked in. That's when I was doing my concentration classes. And then I was also working 55 hours a week. I had a full class load. And at that point, I had decided to leave the team and I started training myself for my first half marathon. And this kind of leads to how I became a reporter. That last semester, my senior year, I got an internship with Spectrum News as a general news reporter, and this led into my first full-time job as a TV news reporter. And after graduation, I moved to a new city where I knew almost no one. I was also working weekends, occasionally nights, and I was covering breaking news and weather. I live on the coast of North Carolina, so you can see in that bottom right corner, that's me covering a hurricane. Um, and I just want to highlight like that last two parts, moving to a new city and then working weekends. I was working a crazy schedule, sometimes nights, covering breaking news. Um, it was hard. It was very, very difficult. And it led me to fall into a pretty deep depression. I was away from family. I didn't have any friends. I didn't even have time to make friends because of my schedule. And that was really difficult for me. But then I decided to get into coaching, and this kind of made a big shift for me. So I actually started coaching to supplement my income. If anybody knows anything about a TV news reporter starting out in the industry, they do not make very much. And I was struggling to stay afloat. I was literally eating one meal a day because most of my pay was going to rent because rent's so expensive. So I was struggling. I decided to do coaching to supplement that income. I began private coaching when somebody had stopped me in the middle of a hill workout that I was doing and asked me if I coached. And in that moment, I was, I could have said, no, I don't. I've never coached anybody before, but I was like, yeah, I can coach. And that led to me having my first client. And with that, then I wanted to kind of expand more. And one day I just went to the local high school and was like, hey, do you guys need any help with your cross country or track team? And I was hired on as a volunteer coach. But over the next year, I went from volunteer coach to assistant coach to the head coach of the program. And I was actually the youngest head coach in the state of North Carolina at 23 years old. A few months later, in the summer of 2023, I had met my husband, and we were dating at the time, obviously, but he started encouraging me more to take what I was doing with work, doing the content creation and the videos and stories that I was doing, but apply that in my own sense to my personal life. And so he encouraged me to post on social media, and that's what I started doing. I started posting running videos, exercise videos, all that kind of stuff. And I got really lucky. I was one of the lucky ones where I posted something and it went viral, and I grew to over 40,000 followers just on Instagram in about a year. And when my contract ended, I didn't have to renew it. I didn't need the job. I was able to take content creation and private coaching full time. And this was big for me. I was struggling so much working the 9 to 5, even though my schedule wasn't a 9 to 5. I think the fact that it was full time, sometimes more than full time, but it was crazy hours. And because we were going into an election year, a lot of things were kind of the way that we were covering things. It was really stressful for me. I wanted to get into reporting to become a sports reporter and cover sports, but then I was being thrown into not just the political side of things, but I also had to cover a man chase, and it ended with a man being shot dead in the middle of a street, and I had to report live on live TV and talk about what happened, standing not even 100 meters away from this man's dead body. And that was just so stressful and just too much. So that job was a massive stress on me. It was causing so much strain, and it was making things really difficult. So to be able to leave that job and to make my own hours to just focus on coaching, and with each athlete, each client that I got to work with, I got to learn their stories and I got to help them reach their goals. So going back to the conversation I had with my coach, I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. I was learning about people, what drives them, what motivates them, and what their goals are, and helping them achieve their goals. So with that, now I help others rise mentally, physically, and emotionally, whatever they want to focus on, all of it. I also work with high performing athletes. I've worked with some semi-professional track and field athletes. I also work with women who want to heal their cycles and eating disorders. I didn't mention this, but when I was in college, I did struggle with an eating disorder, and obviously that also negatively affected not just my mental health, but my physical health. And I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure that also led to kind of the constant back-to-back injuries in college. And then I also help military service members and other public service members, police, firefighters, because these specific jobs have to be physically fit to be able to do what they need to do. I mean, in the military, they have what are, PT tests. So they have physical fitness tests where they have to achieve a certain level of fitness. And I help them do just that, not just get the passing score, but help them get the highest possible score. And I also help anyone who is ready to reclaim their ownership over their health, their physical health, their mental health, all of it, because they want to choose to live a life worth living. And this is where I tell you about biohacking. So the last about 20 minutes, I've been talking about my life and all the kind of not so fun things that I had been through. But it really, things really started to change right after I graduated from college. My dad bought me an Aura ring, and still to this day, I wear my Aura ring, and you can see. This is a wedding picture from my husband and I's wedding, but got my Aura ring on. Aura actually used that picture on their social media for Valentine's Day. But my Aura ring has honestly been my biggest biohack. I every single morning I wake up and the first thing I look at is my readiness score, my sleep score, to see how I slept, how I recovered, when was my lowest resting heart rate, how my HRV was, and all that kind of stuff. And I use those kinds of things to go into my day. Uh, Also, I mentioned that that I am an athlete. I am a triathlete, and I'm currently working towards my professional license for triathlon. And later this year in October, I will be participating and competing in the World Triathlon, the World Championships in Australia. So having these numbers, seeing how I'm recovering at night, knowing if I'm getting not just enough sleep, but enough deep sleep and REM sleep to know that my body is recovering and responding to the workouts that I'm doing. So Oura Ring, favorite thing ever. I also use it to track my cycle, so my menstrual cycle. And for the women on here, it has made a world of a difference, especially when I was healing from my eating disorder. I had lost my period for 2 years, and when getting my Oura ring and kind of tuning into my health, having my Oura ring to track my period really let me know kind of where I was in healing my hormones. Um, Other things that I did, I changed what I was putting in my body. I don't know if you guys know what Bojangles is, but in the US, in mostly the southern states, it's fried chicken, French fries, biscuits. It's what you would think of like soul food, but fast food, soul food. It was really good. I personally don't think it's that great anymore because I think I can make a better fried chicken now. But I was eating that like once a week, and I was eating Chipotle another day a week. And I was not eating nearly enough protein. And I was eating like ice cream and, just a lot of stuff that you just stick in the microwave, and all that kind of stuff. but I changed what I was eating to more whole foods. I now cook the majority of the things that I eat. I mean, in this picture, you can see, I mean, sweet potato fries. I fried them in tallow when they're in like a garlic butter parmesan sauce, and then I got a burger with onion jam and bacon and cheese and stuff like that. So I started prioritizing the quality of food and not eating like as much processed foods. I also started to invest in high quality supplements from your probiotics, vitamin D, NAD plus. I have like a whole list of supplements. I literally have a supplement cabinet with all the things that I take, but I started looking into high quality stuff that was not just going to supplement kind of just health overall, but also looking into what's going to help me with my mental health, and then what's also going to help me with my athletic performance. And another thing I started doing was red light therapy. I actually have this gigantic red light now from Platinum LED, and I do red light therapy every single day. And because of the benefits, like especially for mental health, but with the wavelengths that red light has, the red and near infrared wavelengths, they've shown that they improve mental health by boosting brain cell activity, reducing inflammation, and potentially regulating mood. And I'm all about anything that is going to help me manage my mood disorder. And then I also started working on my circadian rhythm alignment. That's like so important for health. I try to go to bed and wake up roughly around the same time every single day. And since doing that, I sleep so much better. I have more energy through the day. I've noticed that it has played a huge role in my mental health. It's regulated my mood. I don't get as angry as often, and I feel a lot more in control when I do that. And then obviously moving my body, I am training to be a professional athlete. So, getting out there, getting in the sun, getting my heart pumping, strength training, all that kind of good stuff. And this also kind of going off that is like a major shift. After 6 years, I have finally come to a place where I no longer need to take a mood stabilizer or an antidepressant. Um, that's huge, especially if you know anything about mood disorders. You're told that if you're diagnosed with something like bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder, that you have to be on meds for your entire life. It's not true. If you do the things that you need to do, you can manage it without pills. And that's where I am in my journey right now. But it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. I'm not saying that you do all those things and then one day you're cured of it. I still struggle sometimes with my mood, but it's all about things like mindfulness and all that. I'll talk a little bit more of that later. But what are some things that I do to manage my mental health without prescriptions? I still see my psychiatrist regularly to make sure that I am doing okay, that I'm not falling into a major depressive episode or going up into a manic episode. So we're very mindful of that. We're very aware, just in case I do need to go back. One thing in going on and off medication, when you go off of the medication, understanding that you might have to go back on it, and that is okay. Um, and other things that I do is I exercise very regularly. Obviously, these are pictures from one of the races that I recently had. I focus on my regular sleep-wake cycle. I talked about that. I eat really well, focusing on whole foods, high-quality protein sources. I love my grass-fed, grass-finished beef. It's my favorite. I also use all natural products in my self-care. I really try to do my best to avoid any hormone disrupting chemicals that can be found in like your everyday soaps and lotions and stuff like that. I try to do my very best to use all natural products. I do lymphatic drainage daily, and I also use my red light daily. And I like to try to live as naturally as possible, doing the best I can to avoid as many toxins. But unfortunately, the way that the world is, it's not perfect. You can't avoid every single toxin, but actively making the choice to limit them as much as possible throughout the day is really important and something that I do. So I mentioned that I'm a coach. So what do I teach now? I teach mind body optimization. So I talk to a lot of my clients about um, things like meditation, how to get better sleep, mindfulness, self-awareness. One thing that a lot of people these days struggle with is high cortisol. And, particularly talking about my female clients, that's a big thing that can impact your hormone health, your menstrual cycle. So finding ways to relax and like bring that down. We talk a lot about that, and then root cause healing. So talking about, your gut health, your hormones, blood sugar, like those insulin spikes and stuff like that. How can we reduce that? How can we manage those things? How can we heal those things? And then also looking at strength through structure. Going back to my bipolar disorder diagnosis and having a mood disorder, it is like constantly up and down. Like for a while, I'm super depressed, and then all of a sudden, I have the energy and strength of 1,000 men. And then I'm back down to the depressive episode. So things were just like constantly like a roller coaster, up and down and up and down. So one thing I found was structure, was a schedule, something that I could fall back on, knowing that I had that in place to help me, stay in line and continue moving through the day without having a spiraling moment. And then resilience through rhythm, consistency and time, and just choosing every single day to be the best, healthiest version of yourself. And finally, I just wanted to leave you guys with a quick quote. You don't need to be broken to begin. You just need to be ready to own your story. And it really starts with that, actively making the decision that you want to be healthier. You want to, in my case, not want to die every single day. Actively making the choice that you want to be better. Now I just wanted to take any questions if anybody had any. If not, here are ways to contact me. If you want to talk one-on-one, you can shoot me an email, go on my website, or go on social media. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, Raven, we can start off with you.
I think Chris raised his hand before me, I think.
Oh,
Okay.
Just a quick question. Yeah, great talk, great story, Alexander. Thank you so much. Have you done anything to reduce the incidence of injuries? I may have missed that, but it's very curious that you seem to have been avoiding that lately.
Yes. So all the things I talked about, what I do now has helped me not be injured. So I do a ton of strength training just to make sure that my muscles are strong enough to withstand the intensity that I go through with training every single day. But also, one thing with my Aura Ring, it lets me know when I've recovered properly. If I love it. If I wake up and I see my readiness score is like a 70 or below, I will not exercise. If I like see that my sleep, that I got barely any sleep, I will either try to sleep in, take a nap or something like that. But knowing when I'm recovered and able to properly execute my workouts, I'll go do them. But if I'm not recovered, I won't. And I have noticed that being in tune with my body has really helped me prevent injuries. I hope that answers your question.
So my question was also along the similar lines. So let's say after you get injured, what are like the top 3 or 5 things that you can do to accelerate your healing?
Yeah, so a couple things. One is sleep. Sleeping is like the optimal time of when your body is actually recovering. So making sure that you're getting enough sleep is so important. And then also focusing on what you're putting into your body, whether that's, supplementing with supplements and stuff like that, but also focusing on like high quality protein sources, looking at foods that are not high inflammatory. So looking at those antioxidants like your fruits, your blueberries. I have blueberries every single day. They're amazing for you. But prioritizing what you're putting into your body, and then also sleeping, because that's what's going to help you recover faster. Some other things are like red light therapy. I had a little bit of a foot injury back in February, and I do like like I said, I have this big red light. But when I was struggling with that foot injury, I put my foot like right in front of the red light when I would do it every single day. And that red light is shown to help with recovering and healing and reducing inflammation and stuff like that. So that's one thing that I personally love to do. But yeah, trying to decrease inflammation, getting proper sleep so that you can recover, and then also eating really well to help with your recovery.
Cool. I think Kevin has a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi there. Thanks for the talk. And first off, not a question. I just want to commend you on the fact that you don't take any medicine for bipolar is pretty amazing. I had a good friend of mine, my next door neighbor, who he died recently, due to the struggles with all the medication he was taking. And it's really all the things you said about like he would just disappear for like a week because he couldn't handle interaction and had to sleep. And then some weekends he wanted to like do things for 24 hours straight. So that's pretty crazy that you're able to do that. Not crazy, but it's amazing. And my question is, when you start helping someone, do you ever notice that people are like intimidated by how like calm and collected and like accomplished you've become just from, like you're doing triathlons and you're doing all these things, and the way you convey your message is so confident and clear that sometimes I almost think people will be like, holy crap, she just got it all figured out. Like she went from 0 to 100 and I'm at 2. How do I get to 3 and 4?
Yeah, so I think one thing too, especially why I think that my coaching and training is very different, is I am so incredibly like transparent and honest with my clients. Like when I'm struggling, I will let them know, because I want them to see that I am a human being too. Like, yes, I have gone through all of these things. I've been able to make it on social media with coaching and start my own business and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that I have it all figured out. Life is ongoing, constantly changing. And I just have honest conversations with the people that I work with, kind of how we're talking right now. I'm an open book. You can ask me anything. And I've noticed that being that honest with my clients, especially my clients that have had like a rough background, specifically those female athletes coming to me who have struggled with disordered eating, and lost their cycles, all that kind of stuff. Having those conversations and letting them know that they are not only seen and heard, but like, I get it. Like I went through that, and allowing people that I talk to like, no, like I understand, like maybe I don't know your exact situation, but I've been through crap too. And just like my dad said, there's always tomorrow. We have tomorrow. So just encouraging people to just be as honest as they want to be with me. And my clients, I tell them, the more transparent, the more you tell me, the better that I can make a training program that's going to help you get to exactly where you want to be.
Thank you.
Raven, got another question?
Okay. Yeah. So I had another question, which is more specific to recovery again. Specifically diet, like let's say you get into any form of injury, like what would you roughly eat? Like would you eat like a lot of grass-fed beef and blueberries and no carbs, or like how would you like proportion, like divide the macros and something like
Yeah,
that?
so it's different like person to person, because yes, you may get an injury, but also at the end of the day, like what are your goals? So you have to eat based on what your goals are, as well as like, with the injury and stuff like that. I always recommend having a high protein diet. Like me, I'm 125 pounds and I aim to get between 120 and 150 grams of protein every single day. So I focus on what I'm getting from protein. But also when you're eating those whole protein sources, you get your healthy fats. And fats are really, really important, especially for women, because like our specific hormones rely on the fat in your body to be able to work the way that they need to. And with, carbohydrates, I do my best to avoid like highly processed carbohydrates. So like I love like sweet potato, and I'll eat like white rice and like stuff like that. But again, like I said, like it really depends on what your goals are and also what makes your body feel good. Like if you feel really good, like not eating any carbs and doing like keto or something like that, like then that's what you should do. But if you need carbohydrates to function, eat your carbohydrates. So it truly does depend person to person on, your body, what makes you feel good. But you can never go wrong with high quality protein.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think M has a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. Thanks for the story once again, Alex. This was amazing. I think you mentioned briefly hormones, and I think you mentioned also cortisol optimization. So could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so cortisol is, to a certain level, it's like fantastic. It gets you going. There's like positive, like there's good stress and there's like bad stress and stuff. And that good stress can, help you with like achieving certain things and all that kind of stuff. But when your cortisol levels are like get to a certain point and are too high, your body goes into this fight or fight mode. And when you're in the fight or fight mode, that's kind of where you see things not go so great. So for example, I actually have a client who she is, I think, like 24 now, and she didn't have her period for 8 years. We've been working together for a year now, and she's finally gotten her period back, which is huge. But one thing that I had her do when we first started working together is I had her take like a hormone panel to kind of see where her hormones are and stuff. And when it came back, like her cortisol level, like absolutely through the roof. And with your body being in that flight or fight mode, that for women especially, like that can turn off your cycle. That can turn off like the way that your other hormones are, working and stuff like that. And we talk about like a lot of people, they want to be like toned and they don't want to have a lot of fat on their body and they want to lose fat and like stuff like that. If your cortisol is super high, your body is storing fat because your body is in this like phase or like thought process, like, oh, I don't know like when I'm gonna get like a proper meal and stuff next, and like I don't know where my next bout of nutrients is gonna come from, so it stores it. So when you're looking into fat loss, like looking at like the cortisol, like being less stressed and stuff like that. And then ways to manage it again is like sleep, but also having high cortisol can very negatively affect your sleep, where you're waking up multiple times through the night. You're not getting the proper amount of deep sleep or REM sleep and stuff like that, or you're laying there for like an hour or even more sometimes, trying to fall asleep, but you just can't, because your mind like is again in that flight or fight mode. So you're constantly like, oh, what's going to happen next? Like, what's here? What's there? Like, just constantly on edge. But going into trying to bring it back down, things to do. One, your 30 to 50 grams of protein first thing in the morning before you do a really intense workout, because those high intensity workouts will also spike your cortisol and stuff too. So trying to do things that will help manage those spikes in cortisol, but also like bringing them back down. So practicing self-awareness, mindfulness. I love doing meditation. I do like a meditation every single night before I go to bed, and it helps me like sleep so great. And just doing those things to help manage it. Did that answer your question? I feel like I said so much.
No, it is. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions that I can answer? I don't think so. I know somebody had put in the chat and asked if I could drop my social media handles. I'm going to send that right now. So you'll have my email, my website if you want to check it out, and then my social media. I'm primarily on Instagram. So that's where I post like the majority of my stuff. And then I'm also on like Facebook. Those are like my two bigger platforms. But yeah, I also respond to all of my DMs. So if you have a question, like I'll respond to you via DM. If you don't use like Instagram or Facebook or anything like that, shoot me an email. I'm very on top of responding to emails. So yeah, just gonna ask once more if anybody else has any questions that I can answer.
I have one more question actually.
Go ahead.
Other than like all the interventions that you've mentioned, what's the one thing that you're or like what's the next thing that you're thinking of experimenting with on yourself, or like something that you haven't tried yet but you're very curious about?
So I know I had mentioned supplementing and using like high quality supplements and stuff. I've talked with my psychiatrist about NAC and like NAD plus and like how that can help with managing bipolar disorder. So I've actually been looking into those really high quality, they're very, very expensive, but like they're really high quality, either like IVs or injections of NAD plus. So that's kind of my next, like, I would love to try that out and see how that is.
I've been experimenting with those recently as well, so happy to compare notes.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
There are these at-home NAD testing kits you can get as well if you really want to measure.
I've seen that online. So I'm looking at all like the different companies and reading all the reviews before I invest in it. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure I get the best stuff.
It's supposed to be the best one that I found.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.